Okay, we are on Daf Kuf Tezvav, starting at Eis Daled. Now, this is the interpretation of the pasuk of Baruch Shein Kaved Mechusan Li'olam Va'ed. Now, this word Va'ed means it's uninterruptible; it's forever, like the Gemara explains. And that's because Va'ed, if we rearrange the letters based on this matching process, it comes out to the same letters as Echad. Now, we know that there are two different aspects of this unity, superior unity, Yechudi Allah, and a lower unity, Yechud Tata. Like we know, as is indicated in the pasuk that describes the relationship of the term Hashem, Yudkei Vavkei, with Elokim as being comparable to the sun and its screen, that just as the screen of the sun allows the expression of the sun, similarly, the name Elokim acts as a screen so that the intensity of Yudkei Vavkei, which is comparable to the sun, is able to express itself in a manner that somewhat diminishes and conceals the light of the name. And this is in order to allow the recipients, us, to benefit from this level of godliness, as is explained in other places. That it's not a complete obfuscation, because it says, when is God indeed great? Dafka, when he is in the city of Elokeinu. And we find this in the pasuk that begins the Parshas Ve'era, where it says, Ve'edaber Elokim, that Elokim speaks. And Hashem says to Moshe, I appear to Avram. And this was in a way of a form of certain separation, like a divider between the holy and the holy of holies, as explained in other places. Now, in the times of Mashiach, when the world will become more refined, thus Hashem will be able to remove the sun from its screen, and then the name of the city will be called in the name of Hashem, like it's explained in Sefer Yecheskel and in the Medrash, that this is a new identity that Hashem will give to Yerushalayim. That is, when Hashem removes the sun from its screen, as explained in the Medrash, and this is what it means, that godliness will be revealed, and even flesh will be able to see the oneness of Hashem. That is, that no longer will the teacher have to shield himself from the people. What does this mean? Now, we have a rule that there is a quality called total bittul be'etzem, the way it is in Atzilus, where Hashem and all that he causes to be and his life force are all identifiable as one. But that's the name of Havaya that includes all of Atzilus, the Yud and Chachma, and so on. And this is like the sun ray when it is subsumed within the ball of the sun, which is a complete and total bittul, which is not the way it is in the unification between creation and creator that is experienced here in this world, which is only a bittul ayesh, the putting aside of my agenda. And it's not bittul amiti, the putting aside of self. The point being that the quality of malchus that expresses from Atzilus into Bri Yitzir Nasiya is a revelation, an expression that allows for there to be creation, yesh. And this is because the malchus, which is exalted and is detachment of light, it doesn't radiate there. It's only a tiny glimmer. As is explained, and it's called the source for all creation, as we know. And this is through the tzimtzum process and this concealment of the Shem Elokim. Because through the tzimtzum, every matter becomes identifiable as something of its own. And this is comparable to the screen of the sun, because it conceals it. And therefore, the sun rays can come down into this world and be noticed as individual entities. And Alter Rebbe here identifies other places where this can be discussed. And there it is, the idea that Elokim conceals and thus allows for there to be the existence of entities. Yesh. Now, there is also the radiance of the infinite light, as we know, that also the name Elokim is an expression ultimately of Atzmis that comes from the very essence of the Matzil, the way Hashem, who is all capable, and is also the characteristic of Tzimtzum. And thus it comes from Hashem in this manner of expression. And from here it brings out this level of bittul, even within the confined creations. And that's called Yehuda Tata, that the confined creation puts aside its own agenda for its subsumption, its bittul within Hashem. And that's the level of bittul hayesh, putting aside of my agenda. But it's not bittul amiti, a true, complete surrender of self, like it is in Atzilus. And this is why Va'ed, at the end of Baruch Shein Kaved Mechusan Voed, is, if we rearrange based on these letter processes, you get to the word echad. That is it is comparable to the sun and the shield of the sun. And the Alter Rebbe brings other source material to support this idea. And this is similar to what the Shvatim said to Yaakov, that when Yaakov essentially asked where their allegiance was, they responded with that there is nothing, just like Yaakov only thinks about the oneness of Hashem, so too they, the Shvatim, the tribes, his children, only think about the oneness of Hashem. And this is what assured that it would be forever. And that's why there was the Baruch Void, because there was this capacity to resist temptation, and thus to put aside what I want for what Hashem wants, and to effectuate a yichud tata through this bittul hayesh. And as the Gemara explains, that at that moment, Yaakov declared Baruch Void, because he heard his sons declare their total bittul, and that this would be for all time, for all of Klal Yisrael, that there was nothing in their heart other than the oneness of Hashem. This is what gave Yaakov the certainty that Hashem would be forever. And this is the idea that wherever it says Va'ed, it means that it will never be interrupted. Again, a putting aside of my own agenda down here in this physical world has no interruption, even in the Or Ein Sof, the way it is above in Atzilus, where there's a putting aside of the very existence. Because anytime you have bittul, you also have a bittul hayesh, you also have eternality, because you can always put aside your agenda. There's not going to be a change. Whereas when there is the impact through some contemplation, sometimes it's less and sometimes it's more. Like the statement is that man is like the tree of a field, just like some blossom, some don't, some more, some less. But when we have the level of bittul, a total bittul, then there'll be no interruption and no fluctuation. That's the distinctive quality of bittul. Even if it's, quote, only the bittul hayesh, the putting aside of my agenda, you're still going to have va'ed, you're going to have this eternality even more than through the love of Hashem. Like it's explained in chapter 3, and like we describe that the infinite light of Hashem radiates in Atzilus, to be a oneness with that one. That is echad, with the rearrangement of the letters to va'ed, and echad being the expression of the soviv in a revealed manner through the eskafia, as we described earlier in the Maimer, as manifest in matzah. Now is the next paragraph. There's a summary here. So here's the basic point that Alter Rebbe says: the mila, the virtue of eskafia, is found even in Baruch Shem Kavod Mechus Olam Vod. And that's why we point out that Va'ed, that last word, means that it will be forever. Because when you have Yichudei Ilah, a total bittul, and you have Yichudei Tata, which is a bittul of putting aside my agenda, which is comparable to the sun and the screen, Havai and Elokim, like the separation between the holy and the holy of holies. And that's why it says that when is God's truly great? When he is found in the city of Hashem, that is a unity of Havai and Elokim. And must say Gadol Havaya, when he's in Ir Elokeinu. That there were two levels, the level of Yaakov and the level of Yisrael. And ultimately Hashem, in the time of Mashiach, will remove the sun from its screen, and then the name of the city will be Hashem. That is the name Shem Elokim, which suggests that there is still a separation, like the curtain, will draw down from the infinite light of Hashem, just like the Shem Havaya, who is all capable. That is the Shem Havaya, which suggests infinite without some agenda that it will ultimately reach with bilti tachlis ugvul. But Hashem has established these gvulim, these parameters that Hashem can declare, this is where something ends and something begins. And this is the name of Elokim. From here it is drawn out the level of bittul hayesh, that there should be a yesh, but it should be put aside. Like it says that tzchok and pleasure you have done for me. That is the Shem Elokim dafka. And this bittul is illustrated in Baruch Shem Kavod Mechus Olam Vod, that it should be a bittul that means that there'll be no interruption, even more than love, because the Shvatim declared it that they are subservient to Hashem, even though they exist down here in this world, called a Markava Tata, comparable and compatible with Yaakov, who was the Markava Ilah. And this is why they made the analogy, and they said to Yaakov that just like in your heart there's only the oneness of Hashem through your total bittul of Yichudei Ilah, in our heart there's also only the oneness of Hashem, that it will last for all generations, because we have the bittul of Yichudei Tata. And this is why the pasuk in Yeshaya says, why do you distract us from our way? Why do you harden your hearts from those who fear you? Return your servants that they should be in your inheritance. Like it's explained regarding Lavan, and even more so in this idea of Baruch Shenkva and Mechusol Void. Like again, it says he places the Samti Kad Kashim Sheshecha, twice the word Kad, which is the letters of Baruch Shenkva and Mechusol Void that we say in Shachris and in Ma'ariv. And this is the idea of Eishes Chayil Ateres Baila. Chayil is the gematria of twice 24 or 48, like it's explained in Eishes Chayil Ateres Baila in the Siddur and so on. Last paragraph in the right-hand column. And this is what it means, take from them a truma to Hashem. And then it says, all who are of a devoted heart should bring the truma to Hashem. That the origin of these two trumas is understood based on what we said before, that we will elevate the God, the King, that the level of remimis, which is called truma, like it's explained in the Zohar, that truma means to elevate. And initially there has to be an initiation from us down here, halos man, the Mayan Nukvin, we the recipients. In order that there should be an elevation of Hashem to the level of Sovev, of Atzilus, Bria, Yitzir, and Asiyah, like we said. And this is what it means, take from them a truma. That is from them dafka, that is from this level of total bittul haratzon of resistance, which is the elevation of Mayan Nukvin, all the way up, even to the level of Tayu, beyond any parameters. And the origin of the idea of this second truma is all who are of a devoted heart should bring a truma to Hashem. That is a gilui of Sevev Lamata in this the level of Mamale, where there is an abundance of receptive kalim of tikkun. That this is achieved through the transformation, that there should be the drawing down of light into kalim, like it is during the Sfira, as we discussed previously in the Maimer. Each week we take a different midah and we make sure to direct its power only to Kedusha. And this is what it means. Trumas Havaya is, what are the gifts? Gold, silver, and copper. These three metals represent Chesed, Gevurah, and Tiferes, which is the investiture of light in the Kalim specifically. And this is what we say with Torah, that it is called Matzah Ashira, the rich matzah, that is flour mixed with wine or with oil or with honey, and can never become chametz, like we'll explain later on. And this is why it says that all who are of a devoted heart, specifically because the heart has both the passion and the return, ratzoi v'shuv, like we know, just like it is biologically in the heart, that the blood is returned from all of the body parts. It enters into the heart, and from the heart, it dispatches the life-giving force of blood to all of the body parts. And this is the two beatings of the heart. It closes and it opens. It allows blood in and it dispatches blood out. And that's the beating of the heart, is representative of this characteristic of running and returning, ratzah v'shuv. And this is the source of the shuv, is the drawing down of the chayas from the mind into the heart. And this is linked with the ratzah, the desire of the heart to receive from all of the body parts, as we understand this also in the spiritual sense. The idea of the Lev Elyon is the Chesed and Gvura and Tiferes of Zah, that also has this Ratzeh V'Shuv dynamic, that it's comparable to, as much as it is approached from Halas Man, from the human effort, to the level of the Lev from below. Similarly, it draws down a commensurate reciprocity, which is the shuv, which is the masculine response that comes from the intellect from above. And this is why it's called those who are of a devoted heart. That means that as we elevate our characteristic through the heart, we receive a commensurate reciprocity from the mind chudin, the masculine responsive, into the heart. And as we know that our avos were a total merkava, that is a makava to Chesed, Gvur, and Tiferes within the Midas, and that's why they are called devoted ones. Like it says, from the trash heaps you elevate the lowly to seat them with the devoted ones of the community. What is an Evyain? These lowest ones, the poor ones. This is the quality of Yesod, the sixth and final of the Zeir Anpin of the internal midas, which is often kidnapped into Gullus, and it winds up being invested in the service of something foreign, to give existence and life force to that which is external and is antagonistic to godliness. Like it's described that the tzaddik is hijacked to support the antithesis of godliness, and the Alter Rebbe identifies the source material. And this is the ashbois, the trash heaps. Like we know that on every Rosh Chodesh, they're elevated to the level of Yesod, drawn up from these trash heaps. And this is what it means. From the trash heaps, we elevate the destitute. And this elevation is to the higher level of the six internal midas, chesed, gevurah, and tiferes, which are not invested down here in this physical world. And this is why they're called the nedivim, the devoted or the donors. That is the quality of ratzoi v'shuv that it's found within every midah. That just like Avram was totally expressive of the characteristic of chesed, of zah, and ava, and it elevated it to draw it down from the masculine side of chesed. Similarly, Yitzchak was the ultimate illustration of the devotion to the characteristic of pachad, like the pasuk that supports it, which draws down the quality, the divine quality of gvura, and Yaakov in Rachmanis that drew down the quality of tiferes. And this is why we describe Elzalkei, Avram, and so on. And by Yaakov, it says Ve'elekei Yaakov, with that additional vav, because the level of Yaakov is this consistency that runs through and through from end to end, in which there is a revelation of godliness without limitation. It is called an inheritance without parameters, as it's described in the Zohar. And that's that additional vav that we say Ve'elekei Yaakov. And this is also the idea of Nediv Libai, the giving of heart. That it says here, Libai with the Vav, not just the devoted heart, but Libai, his heart, that each one draws down according to his personalized heart. That is, according to the effort that he makes in the pursuit of Hashem. He is called the devotion of his heart. And it's singular, it's particular, like it is with Avram and Ava, Yitzchak and Yira. In general, they are referred to as the Nedivim, the devoted ones. That is, that they draw down from what is otherwise hidden, that it should become revealed. And this is the idea of digging of wells of the Avos. Like it says regarding Yitzchak, that he dug more wells, that just as water is buried under the earth, and it is concealed down in the deep bowels of the earth, but above it is on the earth from above to below through rain, and that the water that is revealed is a measurable amount. Like we know that immediately when you start digging in the earth and you find water, but this is called the higher water that's in it. But in order to draw out the water that's buried deep in the depths of the earth, you have to continue digging and digging. And there you'll find only a little water that comes from the depth, because the water is trapped deep beneath the earth, as the psukim suggest. And it turns out that through digging wells is the idea of revealing that which is hidden. And in this, we understand the spiritual counterpart, that through us elevating ourselves to come closer to Hashem, the Mayan Nukvin of the Avos, it draws out from the hidden level of the Mayan Elyonim that preceded the Shtalshus of Atzilus, like it describes with the digging of wells. The devoted ones, that these are the Avos who had this total devotion. And this helps us further understand the idea of the revelation of the hidden that is within the person, that just as the power of seichel that is included within the person is often hidden and is only drawn out within the mind of the person, which is an expression of it. That just as the soul itself does not express in the level of or seichel and sfar at all. It is only through its investiture in the mind that it draws out the revelation of the seichel. And the evidence of this is from the soul that comes into the brain or into the skull, which is still hidden and not yet expressed. And therefore, even when the soul is expressed in the mineral or in the animal, the mineral, the animal do not have true seichel. Similarly, we understand the idea of the revelation from Hashem, from the source and the origin of Chachma. That is called the waters that come from above, that are drawn down from the waters that give life, that they should be revealed in the brain of Zah. And this is through the digging of wells of Yitzchak. And Yaakov draws down from that which is hidden through the service with the sticks that he peeled to create the spotted lambs and so forth. Again, each one according to his capacity. And this is what it means, the devoted of his heart, each one, if according to his heart, draws down a truma to Hashem, which is the revelation of the soiviv level of Atzilus, that it should rest within the kalim of all of the variety of kalim. And this comes specifically through the transformation of the midas of Ram and Ava, Yitzchak and Yira, like we said before, regarding the idea of transformation as Hapcha. Therefore, we are forewarned here about these three metals, gold, silver, and copper, which represent Chesed, Gevurah, and Tiferes of the Avos, because each one draws down into his keli specifically, which is not the case with the generic term truma, that it says take from them a generic form of truma, and does not mention the particulars, gold or silver, etc., because this is the elevation of the Mayin Nukvin to the level of Toyu, to draw down a level of total bittul of resistance, like it is by matzah, where there is no distinction that we should arouse from above, from this level of soviv, the way it is above, that there is no separation at all, since it is not invested in any keli. But the level of truma, the second level, is a level of soviv in kelim. And that's why we mention the specific kalim, which are the three different metals, gold, silver, copper. And from here, it expresses out the abundance upon abundance of levels, as we explained in the Zohar. Now, each one of these levels of Sevim and Mamali are in general. But when we get more particular, we understand that the level of Makif is called Sevim, and the level of Ein Sof is called Mamale. And these two levels of Or Makif and Or Panimi in each world, from the top of Ishtashlus until the end, the level of Ein Sof at the highest level becomes an Or Makif for the lower level. Now, just as there is the elevation of the worlds, that is the level of Makif that becomes the Or Panimi, which we must say comes from a level of Or Makif to an Or Panimi from the highest of levels, from the level of Or Makif at the highest level. Similarly, at the highest level, when we elevate and we transform the Or Makif, that it should become an Or Panimi, it is necessary that it become an Or Makif from the highest level. Similarly, last column on Kufta Zayin, the loftiest of levels, like we find by the Avos, that they drew down from a level of Seviv into Mamale. That is, Hamshacha from the Ein Sof that is called Seviv, it becomes a revelation of the Or Panimi, which is called Mamale. And this elevation is a process that reaches to the very top. And this is also indicated in the Trumas Havaya, this second level, which represents a level of Sovev, that it should become a Mamale, that is, the abstract should become personalized. And this also has all of the details in every one of the worlds, from the highest, that it should become the Or Makif, into the Panimi, to the highest to the lowest. And now we can still understand this, that we say it should be brought, which is a singular term, which represents the level of the matzah ashira, that is the matzah that is mixed together with other ingredients and is not acceptable for the mitzvah of matzah because it can never become chametz. As explained earlier, that all the levels of paskafia in the matzah of the poor man's bread, which is just flour and water, and transformation that is effectuated during the days of Sfira. That is, we take the love for material things and we redirect it to the love for godly things. This is all only a preparation for Matan Torah, when we will confront Hashem face to face. Like it's known that the primary aspect of Matan Torah is the overwhelming light that comes from the masculine characteristic, and it cannot be embedded in the rigidity of the rules. And that's why Torah is called a form of freedom, that it releases us from anything that can attack it from the outside or from the Yetzer Hara. And this is comparable to the matzah ashira, the matzah that's mixed with ingredients such as wine or oil or honey, that is not vulnerable to becoming chametz, and therefore it does not have to be protected. This is the level of the pnimis of Torah and all of its depth, that is also referred to as wine, oil, and honey, that it has no vulnerability to being hijacked away to the harshness of the chitzenim. and therefore it does not have to be protected from them, just like the protected wine must be kept away from foreigners, the laws of Yayin Nesach, and that's why it's called the rich man's matzah, because it is the richness of it to be the source of the poverty that is drawn down from the dinim koshim, that is, the external forces that attempt to redirect it, as is explained in the Zohar. But the level of moichin ta'aba, this limitless gift that comes from the masculine side, which is non-differentiated, which is the expression of this infinity, there's no opportunity for it to be hijacked away, that it should have to somehow be corrected. And therefore, it does not have to be protected from being stolen away by the Chitzainim. And that's why it's called matzah ashira, the rich man's matzah, which is not the case with the matzah that is kneaded with water. That is called the poor man's bread, that it is vulnerable to being misdirected by the Chitzainim, because the nature of water is that it comes from the top to the bottom, like we know. And up above, there is an abundance of chesed, like Avram wanted Yishmael to succeed him, because that's the way of the man of chesed, that he even is giving to those who do not deserve. So it's sort of that Yishmael would have taken away from Avram, because at that level of chesed, there is no distinction. And therefore, when you have matzah that is kneaded with water, and again, water representing limitless chesed, you have to be cautious that the Yishmaels, that the Chitzainim don't steal it away. And that's why it has to be protected, that they not take it away, because it is vulnerable to becoming chametz. It is vulnerable to being stolen away. Final paragraph. This now is what it means the devoted heart should bring. This is a reference to the time of Matan Torah, after the days of Sfira, that we have drawn down from this infinite giving level of godliness, which is the Pnimius HaTorah, which is referred to as wine, oil, and honey. There's no susceptibility to it being misdirected. However, this can only be achieved if we first have eskafia, which is the matzah of the poor man's bread, a bittul to the ayin through the weeks of Sfira. And then we have the transformation during the days of Sfira to draw down the soivev into the mamali of the iris and the kalim. And then we have automatically this level of the Or of Keser that we experience on Shavuos, like it's explained in the Pri Etz Chaim. And this is the essential meaning, the panemius reason why Torah is compared also to wine and to oil, which is called the rich man's bread. And that is that chametz is permitted in the two breads on Shavuos specifically. It requires us to bake it of chametz, because now there is no opportunity for a misdirection of this godliness. On the contrary, they have been elevated and they have been readied in these two breads, because the two breads are like the matzah ashira, which is safe from being misdirected. This is the quality called the infinite of Abba, the transformation of the level of matzah, which is ordinarily very narrow, and it becomes expanded. This concludes the Maimer.